Ever since news of Adolf Hitler's mountain refuge, his eagle's nest on the 6,000-foot summit of the Kehlstein, came out of Nazi Germany, the world has been curious about Der Führer's lonely mountain perch. This curiosity, deliberately stimulated by the Nazis themselves to brighten the aura of mystery built around Der Führer, made the name of Berchtesgaden, the little town at its foot, a symbol for what the Nazis billed as the Holy Mountain. The glamour scaled off, however, when life at the nest and on the Obersalzberg level, halfway up the mountainside, came to light. The mountain fastness, Obersalzberg colony and Eagle's Nest, which Nazi propaganda pictured as the nerve center of the so-called redoubt area, was taken on May 4, 1945, without serious resistance by the 15 Corps' 3rd Division. It was the mission of the 20 Corps to take Berchtesgaden and the mountain, but, as the rapidly changing situation developed, it was more expedient to have the 3rd Division move on the town, and accordingly, 7th Army Headquarters so directed. Subsequently, Berchtesgaden was assigned to Major General Milburn's 20th Corps sector. On May 9, 1945, Colonel Vance Batchelor, Corps G2, sent a target force to Berchtesgaden to secure certain targets and to find out as much as possible about the life that the Nazi hierarchy led there. The Kehlsteinhaus, the mountaintop retreat, was named by the Germans appropriately a nest or refuge where Der Führer of the super race withdrew for inspiration or solitary contemplation. In fact, Hitler went up to his lonely lodge on only 4 occasions, and on those remained for only 2 or 3 hours. He did not like the altitude and complained that it bothered his heart. Der Führer's last visit to his mountain lodge was in the autumn of 1943 with Count Ciano, Mussolini's son-in-law. His visits to his more pretentious Obersalzberg house, made famous by its enormous front window, became progressively fewer and shorter as German reverses grew in number and magnitude, and when he left on July 10, 1944, it was never to return again. Other Nazi bigwigs went to the Obersalzberg colony, less and less frequently during the last 2 years of the war. That is what Berchtesgaden townspeople said. They were pretty sure when Hitler was on the mountain, and when he left, at least in his heyday. His visits were almost always preceded by purchasing agents who bought up every delicacy and almost everything else edible in town. His special train would always be standing in the railroad yards in the morning and would lie in waiting until as secretly as it came in the night, it would disappear in the night, signaling his arrival and departure. But despite SS troops, Gestapo, and informers, the grapevine telegraph never failed to give them such vital local news. From time to time, certain guests selected with calculated intent for the propaganda value were permitted to visit the Eagle's Nest amidst panoply designed to impress with Nazi achievements. It worked because visiting dignitaries were duly impressed, and the name Berchtesgaden spread far and wide. Hermann Göring and Heinrich Himmler each went up twice and Goebbels only once. Whether they were together on any of these occasions is a question, but Martin Bormann, Reichsleiter or leader of the Nazi Party for Hitler, was a frequent visitor. This information was supplied by George Mayer, who operated and maintained the elevator. Mayer denied that Mussolini ever went to the Eagle's Nest with Hitler. None of the visitors were ever known to stay overnight. Indeed, no facilities such as beds were found in the lodge. On only one occasion, as far as can be determined, was a party thrown. That was a wedding feast for the sister of Eva Braun, Hitler's friend. During Hitler's visits, however, no one was permitted to smoke or drink, according to most reliable reports. These added that Hitler himself ate only vegetables and drank only water, fruit juices, or Apollinaris water, quantities of which were found in the cellar along with supplies of dried vegetables. It was a myth that the area was a redoubt at all. The elaborate system of tunnels which honeycombed the mountain was not completed. They had ventilating systems, hot and cold running water, and electric light and heat, but they were neither adequately armed nor stocked with sufficient foodstuff to withstand effectively any kind of a protracted modern siege. One attack of 3 waves by the RAF on April 25, 1945, was enough to reduce the Obersalzberg colony to shambles, although failing, in one case with a direct hit, even to crack the tunnels. The Eagle's Nest, however, escaped any damage. The mystery of whether secret tunnels existed remained despite a systematic and extensive search in those whose surface openings were apparent. Every tunnel visited showed signs of having been ransacked by troops who scattered everything far and wide in their search for secret panels leading to apartments where those with high priority on the list of Nazi wanted might be eluding Allied capture. From Hitler's house, and also Göring's, there was a small railed path with an asphalt surface that followed the contour of the mountain to the lower part of the western side. This was a 2-mile walk ending in a secluded little tea house. This was Hitler's favorite lane, the path he liked to wander down for tea with his friend Eva Braun. Servants said he was also in the habit of walking down to the tea house every day for exercise and being driven back to the Berchtesgaden by his guards. The labyrinthine tunnels, with every convenience for living comfortably during a sustained air attack, gave plenty of room for suspicion that somewhere in the depths of that mountain Nazi bigwigs, even Hitler himself, might be sheltered pending a propitious moment for escape. There were long, incomplete passageways on which half-filled stone cars still remained on their tracks, and deep shafts whose inky blackness GI flashlights could not penetrate, and whose depths returned only delayed and hollow echoes to GI shouts. The idea of building on the Kehlstein was not Hitler's. It was Bormann's. It was Bormann who suggested building there the tea house, or tea house, with Nazi party funds as a gift to Der Führer. And it was not until Hitler gave the okay on his gift and preliminary work on the roads and tunnels was started in 1936. The Eagle's Nest, a monument that the workers were told was designed to last 1,000 years, was not completed until June of 1939. During its construction, Bormann literally haunted the job. The project of reaching the Kehlstein involved the construction of a 2-lane blacktop road hewn for almost 4 miles from the rocky sides of the mountain, with 5 tunnels and innumerable retaining walls to prevent landslides. The T-Force found that, despite the latter, at least 3 landslides had completely obliterated the road during the winter. In addition, another road for the hauling of materials and supplies was also built. But the big job was the sinking of an elevator shaft through more than 400 feet of solid rock. This required the cutting of another tunnel, a large, spacious, vaulted affair, for about 500 feet from the entrance on the side of the mountain to the base of the shaft. The tea house was built on a rocky crag 1,822 meters, or 6,013 feet, above sea level. This was 205 feet below the highest point on the mountain, but offered a better view of the surrounding peaks and valleys. There was a precipitous drop from the living room window to the valley floor. A graveled and fenced path led from the tea house 1,000 yards across the summit of the ridge to the topmost crag. This little promenade, which gave one the feeling of walking on the roof of the world, had little appeal to Hitler. His attendants said he walked only a short distance out on the path on one visit and nervously turned around and returned. From Berchtesgaden, and to those toiling up the mountain, the most striking feature of the Kehlsteinhaus was what appeared to be the octagonal-shaped front facing northwest. That was the living room, which was actually circular inside and flat on the side joined with the rest of the building. The structure was so well designed that it blended in line and color with the rock in which it was rooted. This effect held true for the building from the vantage point of the higher crag on the mountain, except that the tea house, as the very mountain itself, tended to lose its particularity in the vastness of the surroundings. The nest itself was a long, low, and substantial structure. It was a lodge, nothing more and nothing less, with proportions commensurate with the magnitude of its setting, most of the granite walls measuring more than 6 feet in thickness. Its roof was in the style of a Swiss chalet with wide overhanging eaves. Its lines were horizontal, not vertical, just as Hitler himself reached out and not up. Most impressive feature of this retreat was the huge living room, 45 feet in diameter, whose 6 enormous windows were opened by being lowered by chains to the cellar below. It had only 2 outlets, one up 6 steps to the dining room and the other down 8 to the tea room. The whole room gave a definite impression of sheer massiveness and austere simplicity. From the windows, Hitler had a 180-degree panorama of the surrounding mountain peaks and the valleys which dropped so precipitously. The room itself, with its windows cut through the 6-foot walls, was the last word in luxuriously finished accoutrements. In all, it contained 18 large upholstered chairs, 3 wicker deck chairs with pads and pillows, 6 marble-top tables, 1 radio and 1 combination radio phonograph. The floor was of selected flagstone laid on concrete. The ceiling height was 14 feet. 2 14 times 18-inch wooden beams supported 8 times 8-inch crossbeams, all beautifully burnished grained wood. The room was devoid of decoration, except perhaps the beautiful brass candelabra on the walls and the magnificent red marble fireplace. There were 7 clusters of candelabra, 5 with 6 beeswax candles and 2 with 4. Hidden in the base of each was an electric light. It was reported that an old tapestry or painting hung over the fireplace. The mantel of the fireplace was 1 block of marble 14 feet long. In the back of the firebox was the only sculpture in the room, 2 wrought iron plates with bas-relief figures of 2 nude women riding horses. The fireplace was raised about 1.5 feet above the floor level on a granite stone. In front of it was a semicircular davenport 16 feet long, flanked by 2 massive stuffed armchairs. In the center of the room was a circular table 10 feet in diameter, and in keeping with the horizontal lines of the room, it was only 2 feet high. The floor was covered with a soft rug, approximately 25 times 35 feet, obviously hand-woven. Its rich colors abounded in shades of green, gray, blue, and brown. Telephone directories for the Obersalzberg colony found in a guest house near the Berghof, Hitler's house, listed 2 numbers for der Führer. Führer Arbeitszimmer, which means leader's workroom, was 501, and Führer Schlafzimmer, or leader's bedroom, 601. Ubiquitous GIs tried to put through a call and found that the wires were out. The last of the 143 numbers listed was 609 for Hitler's workroom at the Eagle's Nest. It was preceded by Reichsmarshal Göring's number, 608. The automatic selection buttons of the radio did not include London, although the panel did indicate that the Führer could get the BBC and even New York if he cared to turn the dials. The places for which there were automatic selection buttons were Königsberg, Breslau, Hamburg, Berlin, Leipzig, Munich, Köln, Stuttgart, and Deutschlandsender. The chestnut panel dining hall had equally simple lines. Its long table seated 13 persons on each side and its 2 ends, a total of 30. On one side of the room was a stained cupboard, and on the other, double-paned windows looking down on a walk bordered by 5 large granite arches with a view to the west. The room was carpeted with a heavy rug 15 times 40 feet, with an infinite variety of shades in which red predominated. The kitchen was complete with everything imaginable for the preparation of food. Everything was electric. The walls were white tile and the floor selected flagstone. The chinaware, a numbered set, was decorated with a beautiful red and gold flying dragon pattern. The only edibles found in the kitchen, however, were dried vegetables and cereals, cans of baby beets, carrots and spinach, and jars of preserved cherries and other fruit. There was real plenty of sugar, about 40 pounds, and some real coffee, contrasting with the scarcity of the latter in the rest of Germany. Despite Hitler's own total abstinence, of which there was abundant testimony from servants, cupboards throughout the lodge had been stocked with Napoleonic wines and liquors. They were replete with Napoleon brandy and other of rare vintage. In the cellar, however, were large reserves of Apollinaris water and delicious bottled fruit juices. The little tea room down from the living room was finished in knotted pine. On one side, it looked out on the mountains to the west. Through this room, one could reach the arch-bordered walk which paralleled the dining hall. Hitler's study and lounge, which adjoined the dining hall in the rear, was simply decorated with dark-stained wainscoting. It was rather dark and somber, light coming in from only one side. The lodge was conspicuous for its absence of books and recreational facilities. Other than the radios, phonograph, and scenery, there were none. Several large pads of expensive sketching paper were found in the living room, which were probably there for the convenience of Hitler's once frustrated aspirations. Everything was new, brand new, and even the furniture gave the appearance of having just come from the manufacturer. It looked as though it needed living and the warmth that human living could give it. Even the cables of the elevator showed little wear. Workmen found in the village explained that the elevator was never satisfactory in cold weather in that altitude. The basement consisted of a room with 2 beds for the guards' storage rooms with refrigerators and more toilets. In the guards' room were found 220 Pfennig pulp romance magazines and incompleted crossword puzzles. On the wall was the Cross of Lorraine, crudely carved by visiting French soldiers. Investigation revealed that the elevator, which was found suspended slightly above the shaft, was intact except for minor repair. A heavy steel bar which had been dropped down the concrete-encased shaft to immobilize the apparatus had broken a panel from the roof of the cab. Bags of sand, bits of wood, and other objects easily obtained which had been tossed down by capricious soldiers had damaged other parts, none seriously. Engineers estimated that it could be restored in good working order in about 2 weeks. The elaborate electrical machinery with intricate wiring, the generators and diesel engines housed deep in the mountain were all in good condition, needing only the normal adjustments and overhauling that a winter in the cold of the high altitude would necessitate. No one had been able to enter the bottom of the shaft. The outer pair of the locked double sets of heavy bronze doors had been sprung by a large rock wedged between the top of one door and a great snowdrift that almost completely covered the portal. Entry was effected by burrowing through the snow to another tunnel about 150 feet to the right of the grand entrance, which was known to Meyer, the elevator operator. It was through this unpretentious passageway that the heavy machinery for the operation of the lift was brought in and set up in large rooms hollowed out of the stone. To reach the elevator itself from the engine room, it was necessary to crawl through a low pipe and wire conduit. The lift was within easy climbing distance and was reached through a trapdoor in the lower compartment. This section was a plain gray-painted box without any seats that was used for servants and the transportation of supplies. Above it, and actually a part of the two-compartment cage, was the section reserved for Hitler, party guests, and their friends. The formal show section of the lift, which accommodated 15 persons, was finished in bronze panels. It was not elaborate or luxurious, rather its lines were severe and rich. In the center of the 9-foot-high ceiling were 8 plain, unshaded, frosted electric light bulbs in a circular pattern. On the side opposite the only door was a mirror 2 feet in diameter. The door, which opened from the middle, each half sliding into the sides, was also of heavy bronze with small plate glass panels about 3 times 4 inches in the upper 2/3 portion. Around 3 sides of the cab, except for the operating panel on the right where Meyer stood, were plain leather benches. In the dull emergency lighting, which still worked, it was difficult to determine whether their color was olive drab or green. The elevator operating panel contained the same 13 push-button lights that gave rise to considerable speculation when they were observed in the foyer of the Eagle's Nest. It was thought when the Kehlstein was first taken over that those lights might indicate stops for concealed landings where Nazi secrets had been hidden. The fact that a spring returned them to position when pressure was relieved tended to excite suspicion. Meyer explained that the springs behind the little round pieces of glass were there merely to protect them by absorbing the shock. The lights on the panel, he continued, were to indicate the lift's progress by lighting every 10 meters. This was confirmed by an officer of the T-Force who climbed down the steel ladder of the shaft and back again without seeing any breaks in the shaft wall. The base of the elevator opened out into a rotunda 22 feet in diameter, constructed of unpolished granite blocks. Normally it was lighted by 4 sets of electric candelabra of 3 sticks each. Along the sides on the left and right of the entrance to this rotunda were 2 semicircular benches. Even in the sepulchral light of candles and GI flashlights, the place was truly impressive. From the rotunda, a spacious arched corridor led straight for 500 feet to the bronze door of the entrance and the built-up plaza, which had accommodations for automobiles of a large retinue. Do you think that the Eagle's Nest should have been destroyed at the end of the war? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like and subscribe.